And welcome to AFL Rewind, arenafan.com's look at everything arena football. I'm your host, Tim Capper, along with John Stark. Hey, John, how you doing, bud?
Excellent. Great day. Good news.
Oh, it's what a day to actually to do this show. But I think that we got to get the guy. He's in the green room. We got to get him back out here. This is where he does his best work. We have a certified goat with us this week. He is a guy who played in the AFL from 1992 to 2004. Very well known in the Milwaukee area, specifically in the Milwaukee area. If you were a Mustangs fan back then, I'm sure you'll know exactly who this gentleman is. And he was also a part of my historical series that I did back during COVID. So head back into our archives over at youtube.com and find it and listen it, download and listen. But without further ado, as I said, one of the goats himself, Gary Compton. Hey, Gary, man, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
It was a hell of a day. And, before I asked Gary to join us this week, John, obviously, so much in this league has happened. I know he didn't have a show last week, but so much has happened since then. And it's actually grown a lot, obviously a lot more, more information has come out since then. And obviously, I wanted to bring in Gary because he went through, as I'm sure he went through some very interesting things in the during his tenure in the AFL also. But first and foremost, I think, guys, one thing we need to talk about is, let's just get to it. How crazy has this past couple of weeks been, guys? I mean, it's anything from teams folding, the where they played was not up to par, up to specs, especially if you are a longtime AFL fan. Rumors of players saying that they haven't been paid, not receiving this, not receiving that, and everybody seems to be pointing the finger at one particular person, and that is Lee Hutton. John, give me your quick synopsis on what you're thinking, because I know we're all going to have I'm sure we're all going to have a lot to say today.
Yeah, so actually, I think social media is to blame, don't you? No, but in all
That's
seriousness,
the title of the podcast. There we go.
Social media is to blame. But in all seriousness, jokes aside, these really weren't rumors. It's been confirmed from the players holding out and Rapid City not coming on the field, not wanting to play because they weren't paid. I mean, there's no rumor there. That's exactly what happened. Teams folding because of lack of funding. Also, multiple players getting cut from teams just from speaking out. So I had just about believed anything I would read for the last 2 weeks. I took nothing with like a sense of caution. Oh, is this true? Essentially, everything I read was true.
I agree with you, and obviously now with the announcement that Jeff Fisher is going to be the interim commissioner, we're currently down to 10 teams, according to the press release that was put out by Chris Chetty and G6, and that's a whole other story in itself, guys. Gary, were you ever at a point that I know obviously you were a player for such a long time, and I don't know how far up the ladder you went when it came to what you knew about what was going on behind doors. I said we knew you were with the Mustangs for such a long time, but did you ever hear this type of news where, first, let's talk about the commissioner situation, where a commissioner has basically been blamed for everything that has occurred over the last, I guess we can say months?
Well, I kind of think when you have a commissioner that owns 6 teams in a league, that's your first red flag. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We saw, back in the day where Foster had credit cards that he was using to pay payroll. He made a way to get things done, however possible. Like you said, he lived on the moment. He lived by the day. He didn't know what was going to happen. But the one thing was there was money that was transitioned over to at least be able to be paid. Mm-hmm. So, we've seen a lot of, this kind of brings me way back to I've seen guys that got paychecks, went to the bank, cashed the checks, and the checks were no good. Came back to practice, had their check in their hand. Oh, well, you know what? We're working on funding. So I kind of understand this whole realm of it a little bit.
Yeah.
But this was back in, 1991, 92. The league was fairly new. Okay, we're going to say, yeah, this league is new this year, but this is 2024. I mean, the business models that you've seen, and we've seen the AFL go and fold and go and fold and now go again. Okay, you got to have a right business model if you're going to open this thing up. You cannot do what has happened here. I read an article on a kid that came from Hawaii, I believe, to Minnesota with his wife and 2 kids and had no way to get home. You get these players home. If you're going to fold your organization, that's on you. But your obligation is to get these guys back because you made sure that you wanted them there to play for you, and they did what they had to do to get there. At least get these guys back to where they need to be. And you know what? At the end of the day, you call it quits, but such a black eye on arena football right now. A lot of us old school guys hate it, but we've seen it. But, like you said, hopefully with what's going to transpire, what's happening, maybe they can move in the right direction.
I'm looking at, and I know everybody's been taught, has had their own thoughts on it itself. I mean, I will admit, yes, I was a strong proponent of the league at the very beginning, and is it possible I got caught up in the hype after speaking with Commissioner Hutton at the time? Yeah, it is very possible that I got caught up in the hype, but it was also information that I was reporting, and obviously when and this is another thing too, when a commissioner reportedly, or this seems to be more than reportedly, starts ghosting people.
Yeah.
I don't remember Jim Foster ghosting anybody. I don't remember David Baker, Jerry Kurz. I don't remember any of the former commissioners that the AFL had ever ghosted anybody because there were always questions to be answered.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when the league decided to, fold or close in 2019, we had Commissioner Randall Bowe on the podcast laying out all the details. Let me take you back to a few quotes from Commissioner Hutton from last year. We're not going to be a league that's going to put players on the field for a couple $100 a game. We want owners that are able to sustain and pay for their teams. We want owners that are able to show they have liquidity to run for 3 years. And there's going to be a show called Live with Commissioner where I will talk about all the details of the AFL. Metaverse, teaching an old dog new tricks. You'll be able to go to the virtual AFL Hall of Fame. Your avatar will be able to buy a Philadelphia Soul t-shirt. Shout out to Arena Football 2010 from the Arena Fan message board for digging those quotes up.
Yeah. There were so many things that were promised. I mean, Gary, I'm sure you've been through a lot where things have been promised to you. I mean, obviously, I know usually, as I said, the ownership in Milwaukee was top notch. That I do know, but I don't know if there's been ever a case where you've been promised something and it hasn't come to fruition. Like you're saying, some of the players, it was basically get your check and run to the bank as quickly as possible because you got to make sure it doesn't bounce.
Mm-hmm.
Was there ever anything that was promised to you that you never received?
You know what? I'm not going to say to me myself, but in '93, back we played a 10-game season. We ended up going 5-5 and winning our division to get a home playoff game. Okay. And because we could not put the amount of people in the stands that back in the day the Albany Firebirds could, our owner decided that we would pack up and go play a playoff game in Albany, and they would do a 60-40 split on the tickets. Now, imagine playing all year long to get a home playoff game. Your coach comes in and tells you, oh, we're going to Albany to play in a playoff game because our owner can get more money. Okay, what are you going to do at that point? You have no union. You have nothing. You can walk if you want to, but you've already, quote unquote, ran with your brothers for 3 months. You're going to go finish it out and you're going to play it. We went up there and we lost, gave them a hell of a game. But, I've seen things like that happen. But as far as legitimately to me and never been given to me and all of that, I can honestly say, my group here in Milwaukee, and that's where I made my name and all of that, my group was top notch to me.
Yeah. Again, it's just I go back and look at everything and see how what was promised to all the fans here, guys, and we got to the point where with the NFL Network, obviously something happened there. Well, I don't know if we'll ever know the full story, whether there was pay involved, whether it was a choice between both the league and NFL Network not to show the games. Obviously there was the plus of having it being on Vire and over on their own webpage. arenafootball.live. But I mean, it's again, I'm just heading back to the commissioner portion of it because it really does again, knowing guys how much I've known some of the former commissioners and how much I've gotten to know the former commissioners since they've been, since they haven't been in the league anymore. Lee Hutton was never the right guy to be the face. And people need to remember this. I'm sure Gary will agree and John, you'll agree. Whether you are a commissioner that is voted in by the owners, whether or whether you are a majority owner, which it seemed that Lee was when it came to Arena Football Management LLC, you're still the face of the league. Good, bad, or ugly, you're the face of the league. And if I were to, and Lee Hutton to me is at the bottom of the list. He's not even close to being the last on the list of all-time AFL commissioners because you don't, hype. There's so much hype. There's so much promise. Where to go? It went down. You know what? It went down the toilet. It really did. All the stuff we were sold a bill of goods, and all we have are receipts. But the thing is, though, we have those receipts. We're going to remember about exactly what's going to happen. And obviously, getting a guy like Jeff Fisher come in as the interim commissioner, I'm sure there's going to be a change. Obviously, there's been a contraction already, guys, of how many teams. But I still have some questions, though. I mean, when you heard Gary, and what are the few things that stood out to you the most? Because some people do not know, and I hope you're okay with me saying this. I know you and I talked prior to the league announcing it was coming back and what teams they were going to be. You yourself wanted to try to get involved with one of the teams. Mm-hmm. I don't know what your experience was with them. I don't know if you were ghosted also. When it came to trying to become a part of an Arena Football League team, this year's Arena Football League, what was your experience like?
You know what? And you're absolutely right. So I had reached out to Lee, and I believe I got a number from you. Mm-hmm. Called him very briefly. Told me he was on a call. He would give me a call back, and never heard from him again. Emailed him, never heard. At that point in time, then I was like, okay, well, this league is obviously going different directions. But then I started seeing some other faces that, the Cedric Bonners, the Cedric Walkers, the Chris Siegfrieds, these guys coming in, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? Did these guys have the Coquinos, all these people that I know, did these guys have direct contacts with maybe an owner? Lo and behold, didn't realize this guy owns 6 teams or whatever it may be. So he's going to pick and choose whatever he wants to have his coaches there, which is almost half the league. So if you didn't get in with the other ones, yeah, you were pretty much out of it. And I never heard a word about it, which kind of put a sour taste in my mouth. But I'll have to be honest, now seeing it all, if I was a part of one of those 6 teams and this happened, I would be irate. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I may be more irate than John Forcade was.
Oh yeah, John went off. Yeah, just by John's reaction there. Did you see Forcade's? You saw Forcade's comments, didn't you?
I wish more people had comments like that.
Yeah, I mean, even for a Ricky Foggy to just say, no, I'm done. Yep. I mean, yeah, it's... it's funny. We look at the 10 teams that are still there, guys, and it is teams that have done the setup properly. They have, they have the full net system. They have a field. So that may not be part of the new turf system that they have, but it's very possible. Well, now they will, considering there are some teams that don't exist anymore. It just didn't make any sense. John, when you saw last week, because we didn't get to mention it, when you saw what they did in Minnesota for their quote unquote net system, what were your thoughts? Because we couldn't tell if those were actually PVC piping or if they were pool noodles.
Yeah, I don't know. I also thought that that could have been just some bright yellow tape. I wasn't really sure. I mean, the way it like swayed and waved when the ball hit the net, it's hard to discern really what was going on. All I can say is, at least they had a net system in place for the game.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I know there are a couple of other things that Gary that you and I talked about, and we were talking about pre-show also. Is that I think one of the most outrageous things that we saw this year was what they had as their quote unquote dasher boards over in Oregon. As a guy who has played as long as you did, Gary, I don't think you have ever you've seen your. I'm sure, obviously, during that time when you played, they switched from I think it was the inch thick padding
Yes.
to, and I think they finally got up
Yes.
to 6-inch padding.
Yep.
Had you ever seen anything worse than that and more unsafe to players?
No, no. When I saw that, I was actually appalled that you would put somebody out there on that. I mean, that was just a gladiators waiting to get hurt out there is what it was. Um, how that was able to happen, who knows? But yeah, if I was a player, I would have said there's no way possible that I'm going out there to if I get hurt, I'm screwed completely. And we ain't even started even getting into did they have workman's comp? What all do they have? How are these guys if they're injured? What happens? I mean, yeah, it's crazy that you would actually think that you set up something like that, and it's number one safe to play on, but number two, you're putting this together and you're having people pay. Okay, these people that are paying are the root of the game. Without these people, you got nothing. And this is the type of thing the product that you're putting out there.
Yeah, and we've all seen our fair share of arenas, good and bad, but it just seemed to be that the teams that were contracted, they just seem to have the worst of the worst when it came to locales. I mean, I'll give a pass. I will give a pass to Louisiana, unless they're Nets. I know they did try. It was an older building, but um, Gary, you played in the day where it literally most of the time was just turf on top of concrete. It wasn't a lot very what it is today. Seeing these type of fields and where they were being played at, I could only I'm sure it made you pause and say, man, you know what? In 2024, I see this. I'm sure you felt, man, I actually had it pretty good.
Yeah, and that is crazy. And think that we had it good with what, like you said, and what we played on. 2-inch padding, old school turf on top of plywood that was underneath ice. That you had to layer up or you would be torn up for the season. Yeah, absolutely. Who would have thought that? We would say that would have pretty much a lot safer than what it is now.
John, going to the teams that they've contracted, did this new executive, I guess we can call it, did they get it right on who they kept and who they got rid of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, let's break it down a little bit. So, everything that happened with the Philadelphia Soul, from the whole mess with the travel and the arrests, allegedly arrests, everything we don't really know about, to the fill-in players for that game against Louisiana and that subsequent game thereafter. Just not a great idea to keep that team around after what all had happened. Then, you've got the Georgia Force, not really the best option to keep them around too, just based off of what we saw in terms of product on the field and management, from social media to coaching to, uh, you know, play in the game. You know, the Minnesota Myth. How many times is this joke going to be used?
It's a meme
Th-
now, dude. Come
it's a
on, it's out
meme.
there.
I've shared a few things in the group chat that I wouldn't share publicly, but they're funny. Um, that team, unfortunately, and the press releases and the emails that came out just prove why the ownership of the Myth were not fan friendly. I'll say that. I'm not sure 100% what's going on with the Black Bears, but I liked what I saw in terms of play. They did all right. They did put up a lot of points in their 3 games, albeit two of those games were against the Wolfpack, who are 0-3. And we've also got the Voodoo. I felt like they were just dealt a dirty hand from the start.
Hmm.
Weeks, if not 6 weeks ago, you and I were talking about the change in the barn, and moving from their previous arena to the new arena, and that makes a lot of sense based off of what we've learned in the last 3 weeks about funding and pay, all of that. Oh, look at that, Gary Compton for AFL commissioner. I like that one.
That's
I like that
that's probably one of my kids on here. I was telling everybody that this was going to be on, so he's down. Yeah, he coaches down in Texas, so he's probably trying to toot my horn a little bit.
Oh goodness, glad to see it. Who else am I missing there?
Iowa.
Iowa
Well, I think
Rampage.
obviously, no matter how Oregon played, the arena really
Yeah,
that's really why they needed to get the old heave ho.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, guys, we feel bad for the players and the coaches. We get that.
yeah,
I mean, we
yeah.
can't condone not being paid, not busing, travel. I mean, we've had some of these franchises already step up. I mean, Southwest Kansas stepped up, I think, one week. Billings has stepped up.
Hmm.
Um, it's yeah. I mean, it's just that I, I just, a lot of this stuff I just have had no words, is because I know, John, you've been around since the late 2010s. Gary, you've been around. I said you're an AFL goat. I've been around for a while too. It just kind of it's just jaw dropping to see what has happened, and we can only hope with this change that sometimes, at the very beginning, if you guys remember, at the very beginning, the league was like, any news is positive news, or just to be out there, just to stay out in the news cycle. Well, this news cycle didn't do so well, and I guess, as we sure make many reference, I guess it caused Minnesota to fold. So, but I don't know, guys. I've just been very disappointed in what has occurred. Has What has happened, has it damaged? Is it the damaged the brand, or damaged the shield? That, or is the combination of both? I mean, Gary, if you were to look at this, I mean, would you say that it's damaged both of them, one of them, any of them? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd probably say the brand. Because
Yeah,
the shield's changed. Over the course, of it and everything, but just the brand of arena. I mean, especially when you look at the IFL and the stability that they have, and everything else. I just think that this is just a big tarnish on the brand of arena football.
Yeah, I agree. And it took less than amount of time that did for the league to fold in order for this garbage to occur. What have you heard, John, when it came? We've heard nothing but positive things about interim Commissioner Fisher. What are your thoughts on the change? Because to be honest, guys, I still have a ton of questions. I really do. I understand that they've named them. Obviously, there seemed to be there was a coup of some of these other owners in made sure that this change was made. But when you heard that Coach Fisher was potentially in line to be the commissioner, what were your thoughts, John?
Well, to comment on what you just said, first and foremost, I would hardly call it a coup at this point when it was essentially unanimous. Um, but you and I had talked a week. I'm just gonna put it out there. You and I had talked a week ago that this was in the works, well before it became news, and I thought that was great news that we needed a change in the face of the organization when it comes to the commissioner and leadership because, you know, unfortunately, uh, Lee Hutton became a ghost, and that's just the truth. And to have someone like Fisher with a pedigree of football experience now going to be trying to lead us into the future as opposed to someone that had very minimal experience in the football world. It's a breath of fresh air, and to go back to what you were saying a few minutes ago to actually what you asked Gary, it hurt the brand significantly when you've got Bleacher Report and Pro Football Talk and NBC Sports and every other major football news outlet reporting on the drama and all the negativity, and this is it's in the public eye, but how many people are really reading it? That's the question, but it's still out there in mainstream media that things are.
Pat McAfee. People
Yep,
may not
yep.
like Pat
Yeah,
McAfee, but
yeah.
it got out there.
Mhm.
Exactly. So, sort of to get a little nerdy here, I'm going to bring up Newton's third law, where every action there's a equal and opposite reaction. So, all of the actions from Lee Hutton and even Diana and um, any of their partners that just really were a part of this, they created all of this. They created the negative publicity, their mismanagement and their irresponsibility created all of this negativity towards the brand.
Yeah. Now, Gary, you've gone through many owners. You've been through many head coaches. You've been. Has there anything been this egregious that you've seen in your career? I mean, obviously, knowing the game as well as you do, I'm sure you knew, and your spidey senses went off when you saw somebody and you said, you know what, she does not know anything about arena football.
Yeah, and I mean, and we had that in the early part of when this thing was trying to get established. You saw teams that, they were taking different owners each year. Teams were moving city to city, trying to figure it all out. And it's funny too, because I've always said, not every businessman's a good businessman. Okay. You've got to know the ins and outs of what you're getting into. This is a special product. This game is special and it's unique. And if you market it and you do it right, okay, like the Arizona's for many, many years, Orlando's, Tampa's, you start talking about, teams like that, it's successful. We were talking when they were talking about, yeah, they were going to be on NFL Network this year, this, that, and the other. I had a lot of questions arise from that due to the fact that we played on TNT, we played on NBC Saturday and Sunday afternoons, and we were paying the networks to broadcast our games. Okay.
Yeah.
And we know TV's not cheap. Okay. And hell, if you can't pay a player for a game salary and you can't pay his Super 8 motel bill, how in the world are you paying for TV network to get your games broadcasted? I think that was a complete hoax from the very beginning.
Yeah, we've had early days of the AFL, or even leading up to the demise again early in 2019, is that the league's been lucky to be able to be on major networks. Not necessarily to the NBC days were the days. I mean, 30 plus games, regional television. You never thought you'd see arena football on regional TV every week, but it's funny to say, and I've been thinking of how to comment this, is like what we were fed and what we were told. Obviously, there are some other things too. Somebody asking the question. See if I can find somebody asked the question here. It's like the documentary. They also promised a documentary.
Yeah.
That's not happening. The only thing that's gonna happen is if you've seen the trailer, that's it. That's the only time you'll see my mug as part of the trailer. That's the only time, because I've already reached out and the director has also resigned, so it's not getting done. But when it I'm looking at what we were fed, what we were told, what occurred. I never thought that I would actually call this the early version of 2024 AFL as Wish football, if that makes any sense to you. You bought it off a Wish, and you didn't get what you actually were promised that you're supposed to get in the mail. So, I can't, that's really what I thought about it, but I still have a lot of questions, guys. I mean, actually, Gary, let me go to you, Gary. What were your thoughts when you heard about Jeff Fisher becoming the interim?
Well, you know what? I think it's a good move. Like I think John said earlier, somebody with a football mind, somebody that knows football and all that. I think that's a start. But there's a lot that's got to take place, in this whole thing. I mean, not just being a commissioner. What are you going to do? With the rules of player agreements. What are they doing here? Are they taking everything from this old Lee Hutton regime and it all moves over? Who is the COO? Who is the director of player operations? Who is all of that? I mean, that's a lot that you have to put into place. Okay, you have a new commissioner. That's great. But okay, you can't just put a Band-Aid over the wound. At some point in time, it's going to seep. So I'm sure this group, I believe it's a C6 group. Is that what it is? I believe.
G6 is
G6.
The one. Yeah, they came out a week and a half ago, and Chris Chetty stating that basically they own the rights to all the trademarks, and that they shouldn't have been used from the get-go. Again, I'm going to continue with that's what they're stating. We can't really question it. But yeah, it's G6 and the new commissioner, and this is where, guys, this is where I have questions. And I'm happy to see that it seems that they've righted the ship, at least currently. Gary, you brought a lot of great questions on who's going to be a part of the executive, who is going to be in the front office besides Jeff Fisher. Are they going to bring in some old school people to help behind the scenes? My thought is, Jeff Fisher, he has would he have put his name on this if he didn't think that he would be able to improve it? That's first my thought, because do you really want to put your name out there when you are so well respected that you want to come in? Now, obviously, he got involved with the Nashville Cats. Nashville has done everything right from day one. Everything right from day one. Up there with all I would say with most of the 10 teams that are currently left. But this is where my question lies, guys. It's a well-known fact that Lee Hutton was one of the majority owners of Arena Football Management LLC. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, when I guess the initial contract or the initial agreements were done, he was given basically carte blanche to do anything he wanted, and he could not be voted out as commissioner like some of the commissioners that we've had before in the past, where they've had to be held, the owners held them accountable, and they could not renew their contract. So you have these 10 other teams that have come in. put Jeff Fisher in as the interim commissioner of the AFL. But what about the Lee Hutton elephant in the room when it comes to him owning, him not stepping down, which is mind-blowing in itself, but also somebody taking over for him. So is this going to create potentially more issues down the line? If this is the case where, does Lee Hutton have a case where he can say, well, I owned X, I can prove I owned Y, I'm going to bring you to court, type of thing. Similar, I guess we could say with what happened with West Texas and in the National Arena League.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my only concern. Do we need more drama? Are there receipts that these other owners have besides what has occurred recently to, if it does go to court, gives them a slam dunk case and say, no, Lee may have owned X and Y, but we own the entire alphabet, type of thing. Does that make sense, guys? Because that's really my big question. Because if he did own this, what are these guys? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen this, Gary, where sure you'll have owners that are really ticked off on something that maybe a commissioner did not do, but they don't have the numbers in order to make a change. I don't think I've ever seen this type of thing where you have a guy who will not step down.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Like you said, does he come to the forefront now? Does he show face? Does he try to stir up anything new that's happening? What's going to happen? I think is the big key. He should show face. He needs to show face. He needs to make a statement. He needs to put it out there. I think that's the bottom line. I don't think he's got a leg to stand on anyway with it, even if it does go to court or whatever. Like you said, they put an injunction to it, kind of the West Texas thing, and all of that. But it's going to be, I think the next 48 hours is going to be very interesting.
Yeah. John, I haven't asked you. I mean, did you have questions too? I mean, you and I have been talking before. We knew some of the inside workings, but what are your thoughts when you hear the potential issues that I bring up?
Class action lawsuit. I mean, I was looking this up while you were talking, and that's why I was had my finger on my face and I was pondering. The minimum number of plaintiffs for a class action lawsuit is 40, and more than 40 people have been wronged here in this instance. So that's a possibility. I'm gonna throw it back to another Lee Hutton quote that I stumbled across. I love our message boards, by the way. These guys on here are just, they got some real zingers. Lee Hutton quote: "My grandfather always said I could sell water to a drowning man. I used the power of persuasion."
Wow.
I mean, that's what he did. I guess I hate to throw a guy under the bus like that, but he has wronged so many people, and we talked about this and how I felt so bad for the guys on the Philadelphia Soul and what happened with them. And since we had that podcast, and since I said that, that has just dominoed to team after team after team after team, where the league contractually promised to pay players for their labor, and nothing was seen.
Yeah. At least a percentage. It's true. Smaller teams would. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know where else we can go with this. I mean, obviously we're again, it's just something's really rubbed me the wrong way, guys. I mean, it's why would Dinah Hutton, who's supposedly a very well known lawyer in her, try to use and this is just how I read it in her first statement, a potential race card. I don't know if you guys read it the same way, but why it goes on to the negativity on social media, etc., and then just trying to get Lee out, get him to resign. That she knows that won't hold up in court, right? I mean, I am not a lawyer by any means, but that to me is not a very good defense when it comes to a reasoning for why you have to fold your team. I'm sure, Gary, you heard some whoppers on why teams have been folded.
Yeah, I've heard some crazy stuff. But getting to the Minnesota thing, I mean, and those people were there in Minnesota. I mean, they ran businesses in Minnesota. And, what type of, what does that do now to, their businesses or people that they know? I mean, this isn't like we're just, this is blasted all over the place and it's getting bigger and bigger. Like you said, with social media and news, they just did, I think I saw the other day, it might have been yesterday, they just did a news report with, I think, the sports station there, talking about it and everything. So, it's unfortunate. And like I said, at the end of the day, all these players that came there should have been somehow, some way paid and sent home. If you would have paid these guys and you would have sent them home, then I think this weighs a little bit less than right now of you screwed your players not paying them. They worked for you. You didn't feed them. You didn't pay hotel bills. What did you do with all this money? Where is all this money at? Okay. And all this money you're supposed to getting that you're supposed to pay the other owners. Where is all of this at? Maybe, I don't know.
No, yeah. And you think of what's the difference between the 6 teams that are now gone versus the 10 that are left. Albany has been able to do it. Yep. Billings has been able to do it. Shall I go on? I mean,
right? You can.
yeah. I can go on probably 10 more times. I mean, it's so, again, I know, Gary, you have a lot more insider information when it comes to how things occurred in the early days of the AFL, but things all, am I wrong to say that things were always, it's a wrong may have been made sometimes, but they are in a way, things always seem to have a happy ending. Is that fair to say? I mean, is that a good analogy at all?
Yeah, I think so. It's never, in the way you look at it, in the way that I always saw it back in the day, it was maybe never their intentions. Okay. Our ownership groups, anywhere with a lot of it. And like I said, you saw teams bounce around to different cities. Every year there were teams going to different cities. There were owners folding or whatever. Somebody would buy a franchise. They would move it out. And, it's going to be the next best thing. Play a season, boom, it's gone, bankrupt, whatever it may be. It's just not smart. I thought this could have been good if they would have waited till 2025. Give it another year, kind of go through it a little bit more, make sure you have all your ducks in a row and everything else, and then launch it. Don't know if it would have been better then in 2025 with him launching it, but I just think I was telling, people that I know and everything else, I thought it came out really fast. I thought it came out really soon. But they're not. It's unfortunate. Like you said, it's unfortunate. Now you have these 10 teams that are trying to finish out a season with a new commissioner, trying to save face. Okay. Because if they're going to try to move forward, you've got to, some of these places, there's probably fans that are mad. They bought season tickets and now their season tickets aren't going to be all their season tickets. Okay. So now that's money that's got to be refunded back. So now these owners and the businesses are having to refund this money back to season tickets, which is less money that they had. So yeah, it's just an unfortunate situation. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's like I've said before, and I've said it on the podcast. I've said it on the Arena Fan group chat. If they had not tried to launch such a large league and spread themselves so thin, if there hadn't have been league-owned teams, we could be having a different conversation right now. But we'll never know.
I too spoke with some people that literally point blank told me that, this league should not have launched with 16 teams. It should have been smaller and gone from there. I was also asked by this person. It was like, Tim, if this league contracts down to X amount of teams, do you think this league can survive? And I said, well, considering what has already happened, there will be a lot of work to be done. But if everything can be made right and the rest of the season can go as smooth as it can or almost perfect as it can, and you get back some of the some of the confidence from the fans from across the country and across the world, there is a good chance that the AFL can survive going into 2025, because I know there are plans for teams to come in 2025. It's just my last comment to this person was, you guys got rid of the drama. We cannot have as much drama as we've had for the past months. It started off really poorly. You need to, and they seem to be getting things right now. I mean, with Steve Titus and the Billings group, and it seems to be that, I asked, we need a copy of the new schedule. They're almost done with all the teams and getting it corrected. This is funny, guys. I don't think I've ever gone through a time where there's not only one official website, there are two official official websites. So it's now gone from arenafootballusa.com, and now the new group G6, etc., is now gone back to the AFL.com. So if anybody who's watching this now or watching it on delay, that's the main website now. And it's already been updated with the announcement about Commissioner Fisher. So there's so many things. Gary, we might as well just go back to the days where there aren't any league websites at all, right?
Yeah, right. Where you barely had team websites and updated rosters. You as a press person were handed basically a sheet of paper front and back that had the listings and all that as you came in, and you better hurry up and study and learn it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Hopefully that'll make some changes. Sorry, John, go ahead.
I was going to say Dave Carlson has entered the chat.
Hey, Dave. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to, if possible, switch topics here and switch the mood, but it's really hard to do, because as both you guys are saying, guys, it's tarnished the brand. And there's a lot to do that need to be done in order for it to continue. Because as all of us know, yes, there's indoor football, but there really isn't anything like the game of arena football. Because that's why I think it frustrated me. I'm sure it frustrated you guys too, when you weren't able to use the nets as they were meant to be used. Because that's a huge part of the game. I understand things have changed, because of, IFL doesn't use nets. They use, it's just like regular, it's like indoor football. It's like indoor gridiron football.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, there were changes that were made over the past week that I think was a huge plus. Albany stepping up and saying, listen, these game balls that you guys got us are garbage.
Yeah.
I think Jeff Levesque, the president over the Albany Firebirds, he mentioned, I think it's he that mentioned that, or was it Coach James last week on the Fan Zone podcast, where it was like, what footballs have a bar? Every football has a barcode on them. You never saw that in our days, in your days, Gary, where they were all regular sized footballs. So they finally got it right, because what happened when they switched to the other Wilson balls? The kicking game completely changed. It changed the way it should have been, how this game was supposed to be laid out. It's. Have you ever gone through that type of thing, Gary? Because I don't think you always were using a regulation size football.
Yeah, we never. Let me put it to you this way. I'm not going to say we never ran out of footballs. There was an instance in one place we were playing to where they did run out of footballs, and they were paying the people in the stands that had the balls. They were paying them to get the footballs back so they could use them. So I have seen that before, but that we always used a regulated, regular size football, and all of that. And yeah, nothing that was a gimmick or, we ran out of balls and now you have to use this. And it looks like a rubber void ball that you used in second grade PE class, or something,
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, I mean, we saw that we knew they were composite balls, what was being used from Wilson. Props to Albany stepping up. And I don't know how far that will go within the league because we haven't seen any of the changes yet. I don't know if any other teams are going to do that. But it's just about playing the game right. I'm trying to think of some other positives that you've had. I mean, we've had some great gameplay. We have had some upsets. I mean, obviously, John, you and I talked about what happened that very first game with Albany Orlando. That was typical, and that was an AFL game that everyone will remember.
Yes.
And
yeah.
You've seen some of the other teams get used to it. Yes, we do know that they've come from indoor football, and it's really weird seeing some of these quarterbacks, Gary, go into the shotgun rather than right under center. That's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, but it's part of the indoor game. It's just about getting used to the game itself. But there have been a few positive, but I mean, again, up until most recent history, we've never had teams fold in season. We had only had one forfeit. That was back during the early days of when the players were Pittsburgh and Cleveland, where they struck. So it's very similar to what happened with Rapid City and Billings. But going forward, Gary, what do you think that this league needs? Do we need to bring in the union again? Obviously, I know you were a part of the time where there wasn't one. You had an unofficial guy who was there to help you, because I know I interviewed him a couple years ago. Then you had the formation of the Players Association. What does this? If we were able to talk to Commissioner Fisher, if we were to get into his ear, what else does this league need going forward?
Well, I think personally, like you said, I think it's got to be the structure of the front office, the executive. That's got to be the first and foremost. How are you moving forward with this? Player safety has to be a concern. You never want to. I was always very firm believer in the player union, and I think every sport like this should have one. But I'm also seeing the other side of it with the union of what it's done to leagues and everything else. I just think Commissioner Fisher, if that's what we call him now, okay, gets in and gets a front office done, gets it established, and moves forward. Every day, growth. There needs to be growth every day. If they can keep this thing positive, through the rest of the season, lo and behold, where's the championship going to be played now? Is it still going to be played in Minnesota? It's a good question there. So if he can keep it afloat and this thing can stay positive, then it's got a chance. Okay. If this thing buries in the next 2 or 3 weeks and, players start saying, and I understand, we have 10 solid teams, owners and all that, but there could be other situations, a lot of things can still happen. I mean, we don't, like you said, with Hutton and all, we don't know what's going to happen. Is there something that could force this new thing to stop, halt, do whatever? No one knows right now. But if they can get over that hump and Fisher can get this thing going, then I think it's got a shot.
Yeah. John?
I don't know. I mean, I'm very hopeful at this point. You know, anything at this juncture is just we're going up from here. Like Gary just said, growth. We want to see it every day. I do like that I saw almost all of the teams post on their social media that um,
The
you
release.
know the
Yes,
The
release.
release, right?
Yeah,
you are
it's
correct.
like a unified effort. So I'm happy.
100%. That's a good point to bring up, John.
Yes,
100%.
I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that these owners are taking it seriously. They want to be here. They want to play arena football. Last night on Levac and Gaz, they talked about how the Firebirds want to specifically play arena football. They're not interested in playing indoor football or some other version of that. So that gives me some confidence that they're committed to this league and that they want to support it going forward. You know, the fans in Albany have gone through some turmoil in the last 4, 5, 6 years. You know, Empire and moving over to the NAL and the Antonio Brown fiasco, and now they're dealing with this. You know, a headache at this point, from a fan perspective, tickets had to be refunded, and there were people that won tickets. I heard they're going to make that right, though. They're going to be, you know, giving those tickets away to future upcoming games for any fans that have won tickets to um, last night's game. I think it was that didn't
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So
By the way, if anybody didn't listen to it, we did put it out. I put it out late last night on our socials. That was probably, you know, we talk about things to improve, guys. You know, I felt that, and John, you will agree with me on this one. I think Commissioner Bo was probably one of the most transparent commissioners we've ever had and we've ever had to deal with, especially
yes.
near the end. Um, that's what we need with Commish Fish. We, yeah, we need to. I'm hoping that he is going to be transparent. Um, you know, all the teams putting out the presser is a start, but you also need more than that too. And as you know, as Gary was trying to get the point across too, is that from the front office, we also need to make sure. And this was a non thing, which kind of ticks me off, especially with, you know, being a part of Arena Fan, which, you know, our thing is history, is that let's get the stats out. You know what? Let's get the correct. You know what?
Yeah.
I don't care if you have 1,500 people in stadium, in arena. Let us know exactly what the stats are and let us know what the numbers are. You know, don't, whatever you announce, tell us. You know, just get the information out there. What's funny, guys, is that the only team that seems to be doing this right is Nashville. You go over to their website, they got their first 2 home games up there. I think it's the first 2 only home games up there, but they're still up there. That's the thing. You know, how are we to get to the end of the year and want to start voting on guys who, if they continue with it this year, which they should, because the players still need to be celebrated. You know, these guys who you would consider as, you know, offensive player of the year, MVP. We don't know. We don't know. We have no clue right now, other than knowing that, I'm sure a lot of the winners will probably come from Albany, especially DP. So that's the other thing too, and it's just like, try to get back to the days where you're running it as a league, you're running your team properly. Let's get out official transactions. We want to see these guys. I'm sure everybody in their local markets want to know who the hell are playing for you. Where'd they come from? What's their story? You know, that way, I'm sure, you know, obviously things have changed in 5 years since the league's come back, but now there's so many ways that people can talk to these guys. There are many more podcasts that are out there, radio shows, etc. You know, it's look, we went to video this year. It's just a matter of, it's trying to right or wrong there, hey, Gary, because I'm sure you'll admit, even in the earlier days of the AFL, the league, it was the local markets that would center on promoting their players. It really wasn't the league, and the league themselves really need to promote their players because that's who's playing the product.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's important. Especially with the way this game is, and the fans are so close to the action, and the fans get to know the players personally. I think that's what makes this game unique. And and these players need to be out there. They need to be promoted. Like you said, we have more access to promote players than we've ever had it. Here in 2024 with so many different things that we can do. And we need to do that. Like you said, we owe that to them. They're the ones that are making the game happen. The fans are the ones that are paying the money to come in and watch them. So I just hope they do it right. Like I said, for all the guys that I know that are involved in this game right now, that probably have put in a lot more financials than we know of. I'd like to see it pay off for them, because the last thing you want, is to see that go downhill. One great question I wanted to bring up was, so all these players that were on these teams that have folded, okay, there has to be some decent players on these teams.
Mm-hmm.
Have there been any pickups, any transactions with these guys going to other teams? Don't know, right? Have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, you know what? That probably would be the first thing to do, is to have a dispersal draft.
Absolutely.
That might be the best thing to do, is to schedule a dispersal draft, because yes, I understand some of these guys who were left high and dry earlier on, a couple of guys from Philadelphia Soul, et cetera, moved back rather to the NAL, which I get. To the IFL, which I get. But some of these guys left the IFL to come to these teams, and if you happen to be on one of these 6 teams where you're basically getting screwed, you're paying for, you're playing for nothing. Mm-hmm. Then why would you want to stay? Why? It's, it looks like, again, the 10 ownership group so far. It's funny how the press release guys kind of left the door open to other ownership groups, and I'm like, you really want to do that now?
Right.
I mean, you got Arizona, you got supposedly Chicago, and coming in 2025. Let's center on the 10 teams now, because I'm sure, Gary, you saw as the league grew during your days, with the more games that were played, the more issues popped up.
Absolutely. And if you grow too fast, there's bigger problems. With that, we like to see move into all these new cities, and or the cities that had the game beforehand and all of that. But you got to be very smart about it, because if you grow too fast with it, you're going to hurt yourself. I.e., as we see, starting a league with 16 teams, should have been started with 6, 8, and then grow maybe to 10, then maybe to 12. Okay, 6, 7 years from now, you get to 16, got a foundation built with it, but to each his own. Hutton's gone, Fisher's in. Like I said, you grow with it every single day, take baby steps with it, and hopefully that, it continues to grow. And 4 years from now, we're talking again, and we're kind of laughing about hey, you remember in 2024 when this whole thing took off? So yeah, who knows?
Yeah. I mean, just like Biggie said, more money, more problems. But honestly, in this case, it was probably more like less money, more problems. I like this comment here in the chat, though. Front office of Eddie Brown, Hunky Cooper, Gary Compton, and Aaron Garcia.
Hey, I'd be okay with that. I'd
right.
be okay with that.
Yeah.
We would probably be wanting to try to get on the field and play.
Gary,
we'd have to play flag or touch. I don't know. There wouldn't be too much running around anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's funny to say, and I know I made references to it too before. This league this one is sort of similar to what it was in 2010 when the league came back after the 1 year where the league went dormant. in 09. But the thing is, though, is that there were teams that were already, these teams already existed. And I don't know, is this a fair assessment? I know you were around-ish during that time, Gary, but do you think it's a fair assessment to say that maybe this was kind of what they were doing early on with these 16 teams to what they did in the AF2? Because AF2 really did expand too early, too much, and too often.
Yeah, and you know what? And they did. And if you really kind of look at it, where you have some smaller markets here, kind of like the AF2 did with all of that. And again, I think we want to get rich too fast is the way I see it, the way I look at it, and the game has to be established and grow in where we put it first. That's why it's so important when owners or people want to buy into a league like this and all of that. Like you said, is number one, you check out the financials completely and all that. Can they support it if it's bad? Okay. I mean, that's what's so funny is, I've seen guys lose $7-8 million in a 3-year period in arena football. Okay.
Yeah.
But what, they were able to fulfill it, stay with it as it grew. And you just, like I said, you just can't grow too fast, with it and everything else. So they've got to get this right with what they have. And like you guys have said, and I don't know all the owners currently with some of these teams, but it looks like they're in it, and they're strong with it. As John said, it's a unified deal. I started seeing some of the press releases, coming out and all of that. So they're going to try to make it right. So, hopefully, I could imagine as a coach playing a game on a Saturday night, meeting with my team on Monday, going to practice on Tuesday, and then you tell me I'm playing against somebody else totally different on a Friday night. Just blows my mind how that, you know what I mean? How that even happens. How as a coach, that's got to be very, very frustrating. Okay. Because you just spent 48 hours and all of your time working up to this opponent. Okay. And then all of a sudden now I've got somebody else. It's just weird.
I'm sure there were things out there, guys, and there were documents. I'm sure, we've had coaches who have been in front offices. I'll use Coach James as an example. I'm sure he has some information, or any others that could have said, listen, here's the ops manual that I've had over the years. Here's the player contracts. Here are the coaches' contracts. This is the way to do the league. Follow it almost to the T, and you should succeed. You should succeed. I never thought that the pricing structure for this AFL was, I don't think it was wrong for what they were offering. I know that they were trying to, yes, it's a different game. I get that, but they're also trying to become one of the leagues that paid the players the most. Obviously it did backfire, obviously, with what occurred. But, Gary, you've been around long enough to where you've gone from one end of the spectrum for pay to the next from when it was before you retired. How much of an incentive was it for players to say, okay, you're going to offer me this amount of money. I want to make sure that I'm going to play as tough as I can for you. Because, by the way, who did the when you were playing, who was doing the offering the salaries? Was it the team, the GM, or was it the league itself, or was it the team through the league?
It was the teams. Okay, so obviously you had a salary cap. Okay, that that the league obviously set. Okay, so now the GMs had to decide, how they were going to utilize that money, how they were going to pay people with that. I think, like you said, it's one of those two to where, especially nowadays, with everybody wants instant gratification. Okay, I started playing in this thing when it was $200 a week. Okay, and like I said, and then similar to other leagues and all of that, you worked during the day, you practiced, you played, okay, you went on because you were using this as a leaping stone to try to get back to the NFL or wherever it may be. As the league grew and it became more stable, pay went up and increased. Once we got the union and all of that, as you know, it exploded like crazy, But we were under the deal of, because teams had our rights and we could do nothing, and it was either you play here or you don't play at all, that had to be set and that had to be set up. And
just so people know, this was before free agency. This was before free agency. Yeah.
Yes. And so, Once that got set up and that was done, now you as a player that had been in a league for 7 years, now you're getting a little bit of a reward. Okay. But as you look at it to this day, and like you said, been retired since 2004, there is no retirement. There is no 401k. All I have are memories, great people, and organizations that I played for. Now, I wouldn't change that for the world, but I spent a lot of my career for what? Playing, getting paid, trying to be smart, save your money, do what you can. But, a lot of that doesn't happen with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I know sometimes this can be a sore point, because obviously, as we know that, by the time when the league, it was just didn't work out when the league went dormant in at the end of 08 and didn't play in 09, players were, they were making 6-figure salaries at that point. I mean, we had some guys who were making close to $1 million on a 3-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
And to make sure I say this first and foremost, I am a union guy. But Gary, it's a union. I think it has always been a plus, because they're always looking out for everything. Players will look out for themselves. They're always, once you're in, you're a part of the Arena Football family. You'll look out for each other. The union is looking out for the players. If, let's say, and I'll just use Ivan Soto as an example, because he's the last one that I knew of that was around when it came to the union. Do you think a union's the right thing to come in now? Or, because I remember what happened when they were trying to go to AFL China, and I know they almost caused it to fold because of how it was brought in. Is it too early? I mean, I guess you can have your guys who are unofficial union reps, but do you think that this league needs to have a union once again for the players?
I don't think so right now. Like you said, I don't, I just don't, I think it would cause, like you said, it would cause so much drama, so many headaches and all of that, I don't know if the ownership would be ready for this, with that. But we look at, player safety is huge. And I've always said it, if you're going to take care of a player, okay, whether your ownership group or whoever, if you're going to take care of a player and that player is going to get paid and that player is going to be covered if he gets hurt, and you're going to do things right by him, if every ownership group did all of that, and, I say, let's go back and look at San Jose in the 2000s. Okay. Mm-hmm. Fry didn't give a shit. He was going to pay whoever, what he wanted to, how he wanted to do it. Go to Fry Electronics and pick out everything that you want, whatever it may be. And everybody flocked there. You do things like that and everything else, you're taking care of those guys. But if you're not taking care of people and guys don't have things that they need and all of that, I think that's where the union is important.
Yeah. I get that. It's funny. Most things that people remember are if they'll call them bad parts of the history of the AFL. I say, I do in air quotes, bad. It's because the union was involved. It's not necessarily that it's bad, because I think you guys always had. This is my term. Maybe you knew them as something different. There are always safety spotters at each game, right, Gary? Making sure that everything was perfect. Again, whether it been the 1-inch thick foam or the 6-inch foam, they were always there, and they were pointing out things that should be corrected before the game kicked off.
Yeah, and absolutely. And you know what? There were also people there from the league that were fining you if your uniform wasn't right, if your socks weren't straight, if things weren't and they're coordinated by the handbook that the league gave you, then you were getting fined, and they wouldn't tell you about it. They would just jot it down, but you started getting to know everywhere you went who the people were. So you made sure, okay, well, at least if I'm dressed right when I get by him, once the game starts, maybe I can finagle this a little bit,
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
But it's uniformity. I mean, let's make the product look good. Let's go out and make the product look professional. Let's don't look half-assed with anything. Let's put on a good show for the fans, because if we put a good show on for the fans, what are they going to do? Like anything else, they want to come back. They want to draw people. They want to bring people with them. And now you have this huge fan base. Now you can start expanding to different places.
And hopefully you haven't burned these markets. That's the other issue too.
Yep.
We heard early on, John, that they were thinking of going, whether in the playoffs being played there or whether it was bringing another team back to Vegas. No, you talk about markets that just have been burned. You don't want to go back to another market that's been had a team 3 times already, and it's failed. And I guess it's just a matter, guys, of making sure that it seems that these owners are on board. I have nothing but respect for the guys in Albany because I've spoken to their ownership group, and I've had some conversations with the one in Billings. And it's funny, Gary, we were talking about before about the brand being damaged. And we were talking about Jeff Fisher and him putting his name and face to the AFL. Now it also went to these coaches too. And I do understand that it's jobs for the coaches, but a guy like Sed Bonner to come back on board really meant a lot early on. And unfortunately, with all the crap that occurred, I have not spoken to Sed since we interviewed him a couple of weeks ago. It just makes me wonder how he feels. As a guy who, I don't know if I could use Sed as a good example, actually, because it seems that the Billings ownership group seems to be okay, but I'm curious to know his thoughts or anybody else of the, former players that were coaches and now are no longer coaches because the teams are gone, how they feel, because I'm sure we would get different stories from both of them on would they do it again type of thing.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. I saw the interview with Haran O'Neill with Salina, and Haran played with me up here in Milwaukee. It's been there, and he, flat out is, my ownership group told me this, this is how things are going for us. This is how things are moving forward. I listen to my ownership group. They haven't done me wrong, and I move forward. Chris Siegfried's kind of said the same thing about West Texas, there with anything. So I think, as a coach and all that and stuff, when you get into it, you want to see it succeed, because if it fails, you feel like you're the failure of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think that's, that's important. I have not talked to Sed Bonner and I've not talked to Sed Walker, since they've been out there and everything. But I'd like to know kind of what everybody's feelings are with it. I'm sure they're scratching their head some too, because, it's like I said, schedule changes and things like that. Think about travel. You're here and you're supposed to be flying here and you got all your plane tickets booked. And then all of a sudden, 48 hours, I got to cancel all my plane tickets and now I have to buy new plane tickets to go wherever. You know how expensive that is?
Yep. Well, Billings getting, dare we say, screwed in Rapid City. I understand the reasoning why the players did not play in Rapid City. I get that.
Right.
But still, they traveled 5 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet they don't play.
Yeah.
So, but it seemed that their owner Steve Titus he did them right. He did them right, because I know there's unwritten rules when it comes to who pays for the meals afterwards, etc. It's usually the home team who will pay for the meals, but Steve did the right thing, and obviously he was. I'm sure he seems to be one of the integral parts when it comes to getting everything that has occurred over the last 24 hours to happen as it has. So,
are there any crazy travel games this week since the schedule's changed? I haven't even looked.
Let me double check. I do know the one modification was Salina's now traveling to Albany. That I do know. That was one of the changes that they have made. Okay. The full schedule hasn't been released yet by the league, but let me double check here. It's gonna be a great game on Thursday. Orlando at West Texas. That's gonna be fun. Wichita switched, and they're gonna be the ones traveling to play Nashville. That's the game that's gonna be over in Clarksville.
It's actually the Storm traveling to Albany.
Sorry, you are correct. Apologies.
Yeah.
Yes. It is Salina that's going to Billings.
Salina's going to Billings. Okay.
Yeah. It's Southwest Kansas that's going to Albany. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be anything out of ordinary. I would imagine. So we just got to determine what's happening with Rapid City and Washington. I'm guessing it would be either Washington at Rapid City or Rapid City at Washington.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll find out. But stay tuned to our socials if I can get the information out. Or again, seems to be that the league website seems to be more updated in one day, in less than 10 hours, than the other site was at the very beginning of the season. So at least they seem to have a somewhat of a schedule that's up there. Gary, if you were to look back at people that you've worked with, and if you could, and let's say if you were commissioner, or even deputy commissioner with Commish Fish, who would you suggest to bring on as part of the executive?
Wow, that's very, very interesting. It's funny because we're going to say this, and I'm going to throw it out there. Who's an all-time favorite of mine, and that's Jerry Kurz. Man's just been around the game for so long, and some people like him, some people don't. I think he's a fantastic guy, knows what's going on. I think he would be one. You know what? Hunky Cooper's another one that I think would do very, very well. There's a lot of good guys that are former players, and obviously some of this, as you get into the front of the executive committee, you've got to have different backgrounds and so and stuff of that nature. But hey, I threw it out this morning. Director of Football Ops, Commish Fish needs somebody. I'm there. Holler at me. You know where I'm at.
Exactly. And I've always been a proponent of day one, and him and I had talked about in the early days, because I made sure I reached out to the when I was being listened to, and they were answering my emails and texts about who I was suggesting on who should get involved, because we know that there needed to be some people who had arena football experience in the head office. I always said I always said Coach James. Because for sure.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I kind of, you know what, really, Gary, I kind of agree with you. I know, I over the years, I know I have seen different sides of Uncle Jerry, and it's an endearing term. It's an endearing term. I think you suggesting Jerry is a very good idea. Very good idea. John, I know you haven't been around as long, but who would you add to the executive if you could?
I mean, Coach James is a great addition, suggestion. I would absolutely love to just see some of the former coaches that I'm familiar with either be, on retainer, so to speak, or somehow contributing to the league. Clint Olzell.
There you go.
Yeah, I wouldn't, honestly, the Jackrabbit that is Rob Keefe, I'd love to see him involved as well.
Coach Moss.
Yeah, I was going to say Moss as well. Yeah, just some of the leaders that we had in 17, 18, and 19.
There you go, Tommy. Pat O'Hara too. I agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just get some stability.
Yeah. So much craziness has occurred. And I know we talked about many different things here, guys, over this thing. And I know it seems to be that everything's gone from at least the negatives that it was to at least the positives over the past couple of hours since the announcement has occurred. Obviously, we're hoping more things do come out over the next couple of days. Is the league going to switch to the highest, the best record? Who's going to host the Arena Bowl? Is it going to be at Nashville? That would be an interesting locale to have the game in Nashville. I think they kind of have a heads up now that the director of player person, that their director is interim commissioner now.
Right.
Again, I know you and I, Gary, talked about quite a bit when we did the interview 5 years ago, the historical series that we did for AFL Rewind. And please, everybody go back and watch that. It is on our YouTube page. But I mean, have you seen anything crazier, Gary? I mean, I've always said to players when I talk to them, I know there are stories that can be told, and I know there are stories that will never, ever be told. But is there any crazier story that you might be able to shed some light on that might be able to, you know?
You know, I mean, some of this we're seeing to this day kind of tops it. Um, you know, I have seen players, you know, back in the day, we used to have team vans, okay, because not every player had a car or whatever. So team vans from apartments to facility and take a team van and do whatever. We had a couple guys in Dallas in 92 and 93 that actually took the team van on a week off and went down to Austin and sold it for cash.
Oh God!
Oh God.
And took a bus back. And during the weekend, nobody knew where the team van was, and it took a week or so to figure out what had happened. You know, crazy. I know crazy stories. You know, absolutely. But never locked out of an apartment, never locked out of a hotel, which I still think to this day, putting guys up at a hotel and you're quote unquote of the league is ridiculous.
Would you be okay with that for camp and then move to an apartment afterwards?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I know when we were here with the Mustangs, we used to go to the state fair every year, 2 big rooms, 24 cots in them. And that's what we did. That's what we did. Number one, yeah, you didn't like it, but it was all football. It was a camaraderie, getting to know your teammates and all of that. After year 4 or 5, you know, I got to pull the wild card out and be able to start staying at home. But we did a lot of that. I thought, you know, things like that were cool. But yeah, you know, hopefully, like I said, man, hopefully this thing works out. I really would like to see it move forward for all the time that you guys put in and you guys cover it and all the people that we know in it. And, you know, just to be able to watch it and everything. It's where we laid roots, where I laid roots for so many years and just want to see it succeed.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I want to end this thing on a positive note here, guys. And again, it seems we're at that point, at least at the moment, that it's a positive thing. Gary, I know you went to Europe quite a few times, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that's another perk, by the way. Many people will not know. They won't know about what this league now could not do this. Could not do this. But how the league was being promoted and being, you know, as I said, with Jerry Kurz and being able to get everybody over to Europe just to give you guys an extra game and an extra an experience, extra paychecks. You and I talked about this originally on the show, and I think this is just a great way to end this if people don't remember this. And it's funny, John, you brought up Coach Dozell. Coach Dozell and actually Gary do actually have a pretty big tie when it came to Europe, don't you, Gary?
Yeah, we were actually, let's see, we were up there, what was that, 95, 96, I believe. I think we went up there and then stayed for 2 or 3 weeks. And yeah, it was very fun. You know, like you said, it was an opportunity to get over there, do some extra things, you know, play the game, get to sightsee, get paid for it and everything, you know, and obviously Dozell coming from where I went to play college and now is coaching at our alma mater, who I'll be going to see in about 4 weeks and everything. Nice. But, you know, great guy and all that. But yeah, just a great guy all around.
If I'm not mistaken, you were there, and correct me if I'm wrong, everybody knows Clint from when he originally first played in the regular season in the AFL. Technically, wasn't Europe his very first AFL game ever played?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, think about that, John.
Right. And that's weird from that and then seeing that to what he did and then where he went on to go to Grand Rapids and then go to Dallas and just be phenomenal, you know, with that. But yeah, it's, you know, weird stories. I mean, Kurt Warner, what a great, you know, ambassador that you wish the AFL could utilize and use, you know, and everything like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can't appreciate either of you guys more tonight. Obviously it's not the normal type of show that we would usually be doing. I know that it was something that we'd need to talk about, and we were a couple weeks. We didn't do a show for a week there, John, but I think it was for the best of things because we're able to try to put a spin. You don't really want to try to put a spin on something, if you were a person who, unfortunately, like myself, was a part of the beginning where we were. I was basically infatuated by little shiny things that came from Lee Hutton, and and unfortunately that is on me. But I can't appreciate either of you guys any more than I am tonight, because it's to be able to first and foremost bring you, John, in. You and I have been co-hosting this thing for quite a few years, and bringing you, Gary, which I think gives a great background and some great insight on what has happened in the league before. And you know what? I know we didn't get what we were talking about online before we started, but you're a guy, Gary, who won't hold anything back. And you were right. You didn't hold anything back tonight. So I really appreciate that. So I appreciate both of you guys.
No problem. And I appreciate you guys having me on. Like I said, I watch you guys and all that. You guys do a fantastic job, and, hats off to the both of you.
Greatly appreciate it. And you know what? Obviously, Gary, we'll have you back on anytime, my friend. Anytime. Just DM me and we'll go from there, buddy.
I sure will, man.
Okay. Well, guys, don't forget that we are on social media. You can find us almost anywhere. You can find us at Arena Fan on X. You can find us over on Facebook, Instagram, and obviously here on YouTube. We will let you guys know when our next show will be broadcasting. And obviously, we're hoping for next week. As I said, let's see if we can get a little more positivity going on for the rest of the season. But again, stay tuned to all of our socials. So for everybody here at AFL Rewind, for John Stark, and for the GOAT, Gary Compton, I'm Tim Capper. Watch the rebound off the net.